This Future Construct podcast episode is supported by Applied Software. Applied Software is on a mission to transform industry by empowering their clients and championing innovation with real-world expert consultants. So visit asti.com, it's ASTI.com, and please let them know that we here at Future Construct and BIM Designs sent you. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Future Construct podcast. I am your host, Amy Peck. We have a fantastic guest today, James Benham, who is the CEO and co-founder of JBKnowledge, but it does not end there, not by a long shot. He is an entrepreneur, he's a technologist, he's a speaker, he's also a pilot. He's been doing his own podcast for over 6 years. He's been a city councilman. He's on the Board of Regents at Texas Southern University, and he is the father of 2 lovely daughters. Welcome, James. And what's crazy is I missed a lot of things. I had to just use there.
Yeah, how's it going? It's so good to be on your show, and I'm excited to geek out on technology with you. Of course, you and I are both here in Texas, and we're both Texas transplants. I came from Louisiana 24 years ago. It took you a little while longer to wise up and get down here, but I'm excited that you moved to Austin, only an hour and a half from me a few months ago. So welcome to Texas.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be there. I'm not sure that all of Texas is thrilled to have all of the New Yorkers and Californians, just descending upon their fine state. But, we are going to do our best not to screw things up. So,
yeah, what we say is, you came here for what it is. Don't try and turn it into where you're leaving, so that's, exactly. that's the thing. I'm a transplant too. So I got out. I love Louisiana. I love where I grew up, but Texas is the land of opportunity and low taxes and great tacos and barbecue and like a million other things. And so I have fallen in love over the last 24 years with this great state, and I'm excited to still be a pretty active part of it. And I'm excited that technologists, and that this has become a technology hub. That's exciting for me because I started a tech company here 20 years ago when this was not where you started tech companies. So it's exciting to see that happen.
Yeah, so let's start there. So what prompted the move? Because Texas was not, no. Tech hub it is now.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and I have awesome parents, like really, really, really great parents. And so I wasn't trying to get away from my parents. In fact, it was the opposite. I was kind of trying to pull them to Texas with me. Was never successful. They still live in Baton Rouge, and thankfully they're still alive. They were a good deal older than me when I was born. My dad was 41 when I was born, and so I do have older parents, but they always encouraged me to do everything that I was interested in. And so you name it, I got interested in it as a kid. And that totally carried forward through the rest of my life. And when you look at my resume and you look at what I've been busy at through college and since college, it definitely is because my mom always told me to chase after whatever was interesting and go and explore the world. And so I came over to Texas when I was 18 to be in the Corps Cadets at Texas A&M. I thought I wanted to be a Navy officer, and I was a Navy midshipman. So I was in the ROTC program for 4 years there and had a chance to commission. This is before 9/11 when Bill Clinton was president. It was a different military. It was a different time. There weren't a lot of jobs and it wasn't a big demand being in the military. And so I decided to intern with a big accounting firm called PricewaterhouseCoopers. And I did 2 internships with them as an undergrad and grad student. Got my undergrad and master's in business from A&M while I was in the Corps, and just fell in love with Texas and Aggies. And Aggies are, we put the Colton culture at Texas A&M. It's a very, very, very tight knit group, even though it's a very big group. And I just couldn't see myself going to work for a really big company with 158,000 employees. And so when I was a senior, I went to my dad and I said, "Hey, I want to start a software company. Will you loan me a few $1,000s?" And it took about five grand and decided to start JBKnowledge. I went to one of my high school buddies, Sebastian Costa, who was from Argentina. He's an exchange student from there. And I said, hey, I'm starting a software business. I know you just graduated. Do you want to come work with me? And the rest is kind of history. We've spent 20 years building software, and but the origin story is it was better than the internship I had, and that's all I needed. 9/11 happened right after I decided to start the business, and it had me seriously second guessing my decision to start a business in the middle of the dot-com collapse and the 9/11 economic collapse and everything else that happened 20 years ago, but decided to stick with it and build something great. In 2002, we went to Argentina and opened an office there. And about a decade later, 12 years later, we went to South Africa and opened an office there. And we got into insurance and construction. I can tell the rest of the story later, but that was kind of the origin story. It was just, I wanted to work for myself and have a chance to travel internationally and have fun and build technology. And this has been the vehicle that has let me and now, 250 other people that work for me chase after geeking out every day.
That is fantastic. So apparently your parents didn't tell you weren't supposed to do everything you were interested in.
Yeah, because I just kind of went after it all at once. I have a.
You didn't get that memo somehow.
Yeah, my wife says I have a really bad case of FOMO, and it's fear of missing out, because I just like to do everything. In the last couple of years where I haven't been able to travel and I haven't been out and about, I took it as an opportunity to learn some more skills. I was already a private pilot and an instrument pilot. I went and got a commercial rating. I went and got some type ratings. I learned to play the guitar and tackled piano, and I started jujitsu. And I was like, it was crazy. It was, I really think that, life is short. It's so precious, and time is so precious. And we've got to just max out every single day, even if it, a good day for me is I go to bed exhausted, because just exhausted. I usually sack out about midnight, and I wake up at 6 a.m, and I take a 15-minute nap during the day. And the rest of the day is build tech, sell tech, go fly things, go play I do at least an hour of playing music every day, hang out with my daughters. But that's what I love about the technology business, is that you have this endless palette of things to go chase after.
I love that. And I think actually that's a really good lesson, because I've focused too much on, I bring this up all the time. I have a thing with Nextdoor, that people are spending all of this time whining about really, really unimportant things on Nextdoor. And here you are learning to play the guitar. And my point is, couldn't you use this time in a more, functional way, or just something that would make your life better, instead of trying to point out to other people things that are annoying you? But then here I am right now whining about it. So
yeah, well, but it's the way it is. And I include this in every presentation I do. I speak at construction and insurance and technology conferences all over the world. I've gotten to travel all over the world. My kind of side speaking career has been just really exciting, because I love meeting total strangers, and I love walking into a room where I know nobody and walking out with 10 friends, right? And something that I've learned is there are two types of people. There's chefs and there's food critics. And most people want to be food critics because it's easy, and it's easy, right? It requires very little skill to be a critic. It requires very little effort to be a critic, and it requires very little creativity. And so everybody wants to be a critic, but very few people want to go through the training and the reps to be a chef, to be great at doing something, to rep it out until you have just dominated this. It always blows my mind when people will say, well, I've always wanted to do that. Well, why don't you do it? You love music. You can't sing. Okay. Maybe you can't sing. And I recognize that, that's something you can't control, but guitar took me 3 months. But I repped out. It was an hour every day on YouTube. I learned it. And I couldn't leave the house. So I was just on YouTube for 3 hours a day, 2 hours a day, repping out chords. But I think when we look at our time, and when we're looking at innovation too, just to tie this back to technology and innovation, every minute you spend in your office, you can either be wasting time or making time. right? And you have to look at it from that perspective. And if you're going to sit down and watch TV, sit down and watch TV with a purpose. It can be recreational. Like right now, I'm going through the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe in order of chronology, not in order the movie was released, so I can try and stitch the whole universe together, because there's a lot of cultural references to Marvel I've been missing out on because I'm obsessed with Star Trek. But I've really found that I love Marvel, and it's actually unhinging my sci-fi brain. And my sci-fi brain and my creative brain are close cousins. And so it always gets my juices flowing whenever I watch sci-fi. And so that's just one of those things, like even your recreation can have a really cool purpose while you're having fun. It has a goal. And even if that goal is entertainment to lead to more entertainment, it's better than being a critic. I mean, everything's better in my opinion than being a critic.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's just no good reason to be putting just all of this whining and negative thought process out there. It doesn't really do anybody any good. And really, does it make you feel better? No. But learning to play guitar can make you feel better. Or, again, watching all the Marvels. So, you mentioned sci-fi. I think it is very fitting. And I think that, at least to a lot of what we're just talking about, it's I think people need to start getting more involved in technology, not necessarily as a career, but just understanding what the capabilities are, because there is now not only a lot of fear around, automation and robots taking over our lives, and, what AI, can possibly do. And there are some dangers to that. But again, instead of sort of being a pundit on the sidelines, sort of complaining about, this doom and gloom and this dystopian future, it's interesting that we look at these, sci-fi stories, and then we end up sort of building that version of the future because we just don't take the time to think of anything else. And so I'm curious where you see that line of sci-fi kind of, influencing technological advances.
Yeah, I gave a speech last week or 2 weeks ago at the AGCIT conference in Chicago, where I was talking with a bunch of builders who were in IT about the future of robotics, called it Rise of the Robots. And I believe the future looks more like WALL-E and less like Terminator. People in general get more and more and more leisure time and do less and less and less work over the last 200 years. So since our great grandparents, we work now as a society 50% fewer hours per week than our great grandparents did. 50% fewer hours. When our great grandparents around, there was one day of rest, and that's if you were lucky. That was Sunday. The 5-day work week is a very modern invention. And there's a lot of labor laws that changed to enable that, but also a mess load of automation and technology that went in. And if you look at like the agricultural industry and the dramatic rise in productivity and the dramatic reduction in workforce there, now people had to find other jobs. And here's the big kicker, right? There's a difference between unemployment and retraining. And if automation truly eliminated jobs, you would have to go back to the beginning of the first industrial revolution a couple hundred years ago. And if you drew a line on the unemployment percentage, if the Luddites, who were the textile workers opposed to any industrial automation, if the Luddites would have been correct, we'd be at 50% unemployment right now. But with the most recent situation aside, because of it had a blip on unemployment, a big blip, but a temporary blip. Unemployment has come way down again. Up until that moment in March of 2020, we had the lowest unemployment in recorded human history, almost, right? I mean, it was like right down there at the bottom. And so what does that tell you? Well, automation, because if automation truly led to unemployment, then we'd have sky high unemployment now after 200 years and 3 waves of industrial revolutions. But that's not the case. We're sitting here at the highest level of automation we've ever seen in construction, and we have the biggest crisis on labor that we've ever seen in construction. So what? And crisis meaning we need workers very badly, because we have by most estimates that I've read and heard, 2 to 3 people retiring out of skilled trades for every 1 person entering. And so we have this massive problem. And people like Stephen Muck at Advanced Construction Robotics, who created the TieBot, he's a bridge contractor in Pittsburgh, could not find people to tie rebar. So he partnered with Jeremy Searock, and they formed a robotics company, partnered with a research institution at a university, and they created a rebar tying robot that has computer vision, detects where rebar intersects, and ties it. Well, that wasn't to eliminate workers. It was to deal with the fact that he couldn't find them. And so you almost have to flip the arguments on its end. You don't want people doing dangerous stuff, boring things, menial things, or things that don't add a lot of value, because the human brain is still for now and for the foreseeable future, the greatest computer ever invented. And it deserves a task worthy of its capacity. And so that's really where I view this entire thing. We are trying to maximize humans. We want to keep them safe. We want to use their brains, we want them to think. We want them to add value. We want them to be able to utilize their resources and not do dangerous work, backbreaking work, or mindless work, because we have a labor shortage. So we need them doing the highest value task, and we need to use robotics wherever we can. And that's really, you have to pay attention to labor numbers when you're talking about this, and you can't just make a blanket assumption that robots. And by the way, there's software robots and hardware robots, right? I mean, there's a lot of software robots that are automating tasks too, through a technology called RPA, robotic process automation. And you've got to look at, okay, what's going on with aggregate unemployment and what's going on in industry specific unemployment. And we can even observe when major developments hit in the timeline. And did you see an aggregate change across industries? And did you see a specific change in this industry? And you're just not seeing it. That's the reality. Reality is, look at the last 200 years of employment data, and it doesn't support the argument that it's the end of employment as we know it. It's just a change.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point. Let's put a pin in that, because I would like to come back to that. But we are going to take a quick moment to hear from our wonderful sponsors, and we will be back. This episode of the Future Construct podcast is supported by the amazing team at Applied Software. They have solutions for any modern project. Applied Software is on a mission to transform industry by empowering their clients and being the champions of innovation with their real-world expert consultants. They have a comprehensive suite of solutions for AEC, MEP, and manufacturing, and they have a singular focus to help you achieve higher performance. They have software, training, support, consulting, and custom development. Applied Software has you absolutely covered for all of your workflow needs. And BIM Designs is proud to be a client and partner of Applied Software. So visit ASTI.com, that is ASTI.com, and please let them know that Future Construct and BIM Designs sent you. And we are back. We have so many interesting things. I don't even know where to start to pull that apart, but I'd love to kind of go back to this notion of doing high value work, and that, we're not really here to do these rote activities that we are, putting robots to the task and automation to the task. So what are some of the strategies that you've employed at your company and that you're recommending to your clients?
Strategies for what?
Well, for really looking at, how to retrain the workforce, how to make technology a much more positive impact instead of this, this sort of bringer of the dystopian future.
Yeah. So first off, it all starts, in my opinion, at the attitude of the top people in the company, the owners and executives. If they make a lot of side comments, and of course, I strongly dislike sarcasm, just in general. I really, really dislike sarcasm. I think it's a tool of cruelty in general that people use when they want to be cruel without being obviously cruel. And I see a lot of sarcasm around technology and innovation from far too many executives in construction companies who really make a lot of side comments to me and to others, like, well, I'm glad I'm retiring so I don't have to deal with this crap. That's the most common one that I hear. I'm glad I'm done so I don't have to deal with this. And that's just a really terrible attitude to have when you're dealing with a company that is looking to its leader to signal, hey, what's the temperature here in this company on change and improvement? And on the other end of the spectrum, you have some amazing transformative leaders in construction, architecture, engineering that are saying change, innovation, technology is going to be at the core of what we're going to do as a company. But I'll tell you this: I've had a big lesson in the last 2 years on change happening to me that I didn't want. I've always been a huge change advocate. I love it. I love being an agent of change. I love being an instrument of change. I love innovating and creating new things. We've created 3 commercial products that have had a reasonable or great level of success. So we created 5 others that didn't. We've done some really cool things in 20 years at JBKnowledge around construction and insurance technology and consulting services and products, and our podcasts and the roadshow and the construction tech report. Like, all that's fun, and we've tried to push the limits of our clients in the industry. But the last 2 years, my goodness, I had a whole bunch of changes thrust on me that I didn't want, and I tell you, that was really where I got a taste of my own medicine, and I had to really say, I've got to take the medicine I've been telling everybody else to take. And that is, sometimes you have to accept that this is happening around you and get on board emotionally with it because you're employees. So I think step 1 is you've got to have leadership that sets big, audacious goals and that creates a culture where change and innovation is something they want, rather than a culture that is almost like the jock culture from high school, where it's about hanging out with your friends and doing the same thing you always do and making fun of the nerds, right? And I was definitively on the receiving end of that equation in high school. I was the software nerd. Even though I played sports and did all that, I really had a tough time trying to figure out my place until I came to Texas A&M, and I found a whole bunch of people just like me and realized that, hey, everything's going to be all right. And so first they've got to set an audacious goal. Secondly, executives have to create a dedicated staff, dedicated space, dedicated budgets that are driven towards innovation. People don't innovate in some rare special people will innovate in their spare time. But anything that you want to happen in your company deserves dedicated space, dedicated staff, dedicated budgets. Think about safety. If you just asked everybody in a construction company to just be safe, but you never hired a safety director and you never put processes in place and you never built a safety lab, would you really be safe? No, not. I mean, you might be a little safe because you created a culture of safety, but you didn't manifest that culture into process and people and technology that enforce it. And so that's the same thing with technology and innovation. Is you got to first set these big audacious goals. Secondly, you got to get dedicated staff, space, and budgets. Then you've got to start putting time into studying problems and learning about lean and how to identify waste and building a process around it. Most companies in architecture, engineering, and construction operate off one process: SOMP, seat of my pants. They show up to work every day, they put out the fires, they go home exhausted, rinse and repeat. And if you actually have a process for running your business and a process for innovation, ours is a system called EOS that's been totally life-changing. And the other process that we use is lean, for identifying waste and fixing it. And when you really become a student of a process, it totally transforms your ability to innovate and get things done and adopt new technology. Other than that, you're kind of it's like playing pin the tail on the donkey, right? You got a blindfold on, you're walking around, you might hurt somebody or you might win. You don't know, because you're just winging it.
I love what you said too, because you use the word manifest, but then you said, you don't build the structure around it, because it's not about just manifesting it. You have to have the vision, but then you have to actually act on the vision, and people get stuck kind of all along that path.
Yep.
And these companies are going to self-select pretty soon. This is a blockbuster Netflix scenario on a grand scale that we're headed towards, because the technology life cycle now has become so short, and innovation cycles have become so short, and companies can become dinosaurs within a decade
or less.
Yeah.
You look at the downfall of several major brands that you and I grew up with. Blockbuster, Kodak, the classified ads, Tower Records. I mean, do we need to keep going?
They all saw digital coming. They all saw it coming.
There's a long list, and history is littered, Sears, right? I mean, history is littered with the bodies of companies who they actually had time to react to it. And that's the wild thing. When I started writing software, I was about 11 years old, learned GW Basic in middle school, then got into Pascal, Fortran, and some.
At 11.
Yeah, well, you know, I went to this really great. I was a lucky kid. I grew up in Baton Rouge, but I was in the Magnet program, Magnet Gifted Talented GT Magnet thing, and we had software. I had computer science classes in 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. Through the public school system, but it was all through Magnet GT engineering stuff. It was amazing. It was like I say it was like Fame for nerds. You know, if you remember the movie Fame, where everybody's dancing in the hallways, we were all comparing our
like coding.
Yes, we were. We actually had coding competitions during our break hours, and we actually would compare graphing calculators. And I mean, it was really nerdy. We had no football, baseball, or basketball because the school considered it a distraction to academic success. I mean, that's the schools I went to, middle and high school. And, you know, we started coding. A new language would come out every 2 or 3 years. There'd be a book published. You'd have a few years to look at it. You know, now we've got a new JavaScript framework every 3 months. We've got a new coding language every 2 or 3 months, new data storage architectures every month or two, new cloud and intrinsic functions every 3 or 4 months. I mean, the amount of stuff that's available results in far less code having to be written, which means you can roll out applications way faster than you used to, and you can build things a lot quicker. But it also means that the pace of competition it's pretty brutal, and it's coming. That attitude is coming at some level to construction. Now, there's been some recent events when you look at like the downfall of Katerra, who raised an incredible billions of dollars to try to bring technology concepts to the construction industry, but they did it in a way that was not financially sound as a business. And so they've tanked, right? SoftBank invested money in them. Same thing with WeWork. WeWork was trying to revolutionize the building facility owner business. And, you know, they may pull something out at WeWork. Katerra's done. Both of them are SoftBank investments. And, you know, those are some initial stabs. Someone's going to get it right, though. And it's going to be a sea change, and it's going to happen. It's going to continue to happen faster and faster. There's already a lot of architects, engineers, and contractors who are incapable of submitting bids now on even public work because they do not have the technical capabilities required, in particular around BIM and virtual design and construction. When I was a city councilman, I changed all of our standards. We moved to CM at risk, and our CMs had to prove not just that they had a Revit license, but that they had the capability to actually deliver a VDC department to work on our project and really impact, you know, clash and coordination and scheduling and design. And it had huge outcomes, but we also had a half of the usual suspects that literally couldn't submit a proposal and threatened to sue the city because they thought it was unfair. I'm like, oh, no. We want technically competent contractors, and half of them were not. And that's what's going to continue happening to folks that don't want to get with the program.
Yeah. Well, and it's, you know, it's forward thinking, you know, on your side, because at the end of the day, we keep talking about smart cities. You can't wire smart cities together, you know, and smart buildings into smart cities unless you have that functional, you know, underlying digital layer that, you know, is also now going to start to be accessed by this next generation of wearable, you know, we think mobile's ubiquitous. Where do these wearables hit the market? Like these, so you guys don't even know, but these are the new Apple glasses, the Air glasses. You're the only ones that have them.
You know, smart cities are something I'm particularly passionate about. And I was fortunate enough to get to lead a city of 125,000 people for 2 terms. And I really had the support of my city council and my mayor and my city staff. We did so much around smart cities, and it was so exciting, but the contractor community was really hard to pull along on this. We moved to an all digital traffic infrastructure. We invested millions upgrading traffic lights, fiber connections to all 78 traffic lights in College Station. We took over and controlled them centrally and dropped wait time during football games to get out from Texas A&M from 3.5 hours down to an hour and a half using a smart traffic system. We also put into place a completely digital review process for planning and development services. So contractors no longer brought paper in. It was all digital, and we cut several days out of every approval because we went all digital on approval. We went and we started leasing out our dark fiber so that developers would have fiber up to the end of their neighborhood. They could lease from us on, dark fiber and dark conduit. And we cut their cost of delivering fiber way down. We got 2 providers to come in and bring fiber to home in several new neighborhoods. We just did so much around smart cities. We also made all municipal data that was subject to FOIA requests. We put it behind an API so that you could actually hit a public API and gather all the city data and build apps on our municipal data. I mean, it was awesome to see what you could do in 6 years with a willing government. But the contractors were the ones that were the hardest because we had to get them to where they could submit models to us that we could actually use for our facility management program. Because when I got elected, we didn't even know how many buildings we owned. Not only did we not have as-builts, we didn't know how many we owned and where they were. And then we eventually got it to where we had a full inventory. We knew how many buildings and where they were and what their condition was. And then we started putting requirements in around BIM. I mean, it took years, but there's a lot to do in a real smart city that you got to run like 20 initiatives at once, and they all take 6 to 10 years.
All right. Well, if you ever want to come back on the show and announce your campaign for governor, I am offering you a forum right now.
No, I love I love politics, but I enjoyed my service. Right now, I'm really enjoying serving at the behest of Governor Abbott on a university board. We have a wonderful construction program at Texas Southern that we're trying to grow. We have a great aviation program, and being an appointee is great because you don't have to run elections. And I'll tell you, the campaigns were tough. I love building a business, and campaigns taught me how to sell. But there's so much to do. There's so many parts that have to go into place. But there's a big shortage of people who are willing to just start doing, even if you don't have it all figured out. Like, honestly, this is how it went. I got elected. I announced a smart city initiative, and then I filled the gaps in later. Yeah. I didn't have it all figured out because I knew if I took 5 years to study it, I'd be out of office by the time I got started with implementation. And the same thing in a company. If you're in a construction company, sometimes you just have to start collecting data and make a decision on an app. Start using Revit, start using Navis, start designing something, because there's excuses are like we'll use the phrase, they're like elbows, right? Pretty much everybody's got them, and there's always an excuse of why you can't use BIM, or there's always an excuse. Oh, well, the project's too small, project's too big, project's too short, project's too long. Not that type of work. And the reality is, you can use BIM. You can apply VDC concepts to just about anything you want to build on the planet. But you have to have the desire to do it, and you have to have the willingness to just get started.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice too, because I think that's part of it is that, I can't tell you how many times in my day-to-day work, I'm talking to my team and I'm saying, look, we're just going to build this plane while we're flying it. And as a pilot, that probably is terrifying to you, but
it's the truth.
But as a technologist, you know exactly what I'm saying.
I do. I would say a better analogy is we're going to build the train while it's rolling, because that scares me less. So, the train has tracks and there's no traffic on it. Let's build the train while it's rolling on the tracks. So, you have you have a minimum number of parts on an airplane that have to be built before you can fly. And so that always,
should we even be in the air right now?
Should we even be in the air? No, you shouldn't be in the air right now. I'll tell you, flying, I know we're running out of time, but flying, if I can just say this to everybody out there, if you're into technology and you're into geeking out, go to your local flight school and go take some lessons, because it is the coolest thing on the planet. And the other really cool thing is that technology is taking over aviation. I mean, it is taking over everything in the cockpit, everything in air traffic control. These are flying computers. You still have to have a lot of hand flying skills, and I fly by hand a lot to keep my skills current. But if you're great at technology, you can be great at flying because it is a massive math problem, and it's a really exciting way to express yourself and kind of geek out on something new.
And you don't even have to go up in aircraft because the sims are incredible.
Sims are awesome. Yeah, you go into a good Redbird sim, or I mean, there's a place just south of you in San Marcos, Texas, that manufactures Redbird flight simulators, and they are the coolest sims for general aviation. I mean, really, really, really awesome. And I've flown in a couple of them. Flown simulator, and they're full motion, 3-axis. I mean, they're really exciting.
They're pretty cool. I highly recommend. Yeah. Well, I have infinite time for you, James, but we're just going to have you back on the show because we didn't even get to talk about your daughter. Actually, I do want to talk about your daughters.
Sure.
Are they interested in technology? Are they interested in flying? Are they? I know they're perfect because as a dad, I know you're going to say they're perfect.
I am blinded by my daughters, right? I adore them to a ridiculous level, and so I have a hard time saying. But I am someone who believes in coaching, coaching your kids every day, and so I do a lot of coaching with them. My oldest is, we always called her Stone Face because she can be real serious. But she loves sitting up in the cockpit with me. She loves sitting co-pilot. She wants to know what's going on. She loves taking trips. She loves performing and being on stage and speaking. And, she's got a brilliant head, and they are both extremely tech savvy, but I have surrounded them with technology their whole lives. So if it's AR, VR, if it's holographic interfaces, you name it, they're into it. And I wanted them to have a passion for that. They're not passionate for coding. I tried getting them into software development, and they're not there like I was. But my oldest is really hardcore into music like me. My youngest is probably the best candidate for being an architect or a designer. She's a builder and a thinker. She watches just hours of YouTube videos on how to build things. And then we gave her basically a lab in the house, where she just makes stuff, and she just has project after project where that she's built it or constructed it, and she's hardcore into Minecraft, and she's
really a builder.
She's really a builder. Like, I think she'd be great in VDC because she is already crazy good at designing environments in Minecraft. She builds entire planets there. And so I've been really impressed with it's not the stuff that I picked. Like, I was into soccer and programming, and they're into dance and cheer. And I got my cheer dad shirt. I got it blinged out, and so you just got to geek out on what they geek out on, but and try and influence them some. And certainly, I want them to, what I want for them is to do something that matters. Right. And right now, one wants to become a prosecuting attorney for a district, the DA in New York, and the other one wants to be a marine biologist at the Atlanta Aquarium in Atlanta. That's their current career goals, but they're 14 and 11. That could change 20 times. So whatever it is, I want them to be productive and add value. Right. That's what I want them to do. So whatever that is for them.
Well, I suspect they're genetically predisposed to do so. So I look forward to seeing some pretty great things from them in the future.
Nice.
So speaking of said future, if you could project yourself, 15, 20 years into the future, and you could bring with you, any service, product, gadget thing that would just make you personally happy or just make your life better, what would it be and what would it do?
In other words, if I could just create or buy something that would be invented in the future, sir, I love travel. So my dream has always been two things from Star Trek: the transporter and the replicator. We're very, we're very, very close to replicators, right? I mean, the 3D printing geeks me out so much, and I own a few 3D printers. I mean, they're great. I love that we can now print things, physical things. That's amazing. But when we get to molecular 3D printing, that's when I really geek out, because we can print food. I've already eaten 3D printed food. It's cool. I mean, I've been down this road a little bit. You have 3D printed sushi now. I mean, there's some cool stuff out there on 3D printing. So I think a replicator and a transporter, but I think if you think about it, those two are very closely intertwined, because if you can 3D print biological organisms, you could technically transport a 3D print of yourself, but then you have to destroy yourself to transport yourself. I'm not sure how that's going to work. So we're going to have to figure out something where it doesn't destroy you to transport you. But I think those two things would be amazing. In lieu of a transporter, I think faster than light travel would be amazing. Of course, Elon Musk is making most of my dreams come true already, because he's a doer, right? I mean, he's just one who's like, I got to figure it out along the way. We're going to build the rocket, build a rocket, and he's doing most of it in Texas, which is make it even cooler, right?
Exactly. He heard the call. So
well, he's a California textile as well, right? So he left and came over here. The Texas. So he left and came over here too. And it's so cool because, what he's proposing is 30-minute travel around the globe just using low Earth rockets, which honestly, at this point, I think he's going to pull off. And so a lot of that stuff's coming true. So replicator transporter or super fast travel, I'm all about that, because I want to go to Japan for dinner and come back. Like totally do that. I mean, and why not? Connect the world and make it a better place. But that's probably where I would go.
I love that. And if you did that, you wouldn't have to 3D print your sushi. You could just go and get it.
Just go get it, right? I would just go get it. But we gotta make the entire world a safe place to live, and that's the ultimate thing. Is the whole world should be a safe place to live. You shouldn't have to go to certain parts of the world for it to be safe.
Yeah. And I like the idea of bringing the world together. Just make it smaller by making it more accessible to everyone on a global scale. So well, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. I do hope you come back and chat with us in the near future.
Anytime.
And thank you for joining us today.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.